Our universe is incredible, surrounded by mystery and beauty, and many of us have questions about our past, present, and future. October Hallam is an intuitive medium with over 20 years of experience. She has assisted people with discovering their path by understanding their past and connected the living to their loved ones who have made the transition. She is currently offering readings through Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, phone, and in person. You can reach her at theancientgift222@gmail.com. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Peter Panagore. Before I bring him on, I'm going to run through these announcements. Forbidden Knowledge News is asking for your help. We are doing everything we can to fix the situation, but our podcast host is once again causing major issues with our ad revenue. I am hoping that they correct the issue. They did before, but it also took months for them to do so. We're also planning on filming and producing a documentary this summer, which we will need funding to finish. If you appreciate what Forbidden Knowledge News has done over the past 6 years and you would like to help by leaving a donation, anything is greatly appreciated. Those links are in the description. We have a Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal option. You can go to supportfkn.com, or like I said, just click those links in the description. You can also help by getting a reading from October. Email her at theancientgift222@gmail.com, or just support one of our sponsors. Trust me, I hate asking for donations, and as soon as we get this figured out, which we will soon, you won't hear me asking for them anymore. Also, you can now get Forbidden Knowledge News on Minds.com. Minds is awesome. It's decentralized, it's censorship-free, and it's a platform for video and social media. You don't have to worry about getting put in the corner for speaking truth. You can join by clicking that link in the description. Also, our new free episodes are always available on Rokfin, Odysee, all podcast platforms, and now Rumble. If you aren't on Rokfin yet, you're missing some amazing content. Rokfin is where you get all our premium content and all the content from every creator on Rokfin. Check out our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. It's the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature some awesome podcasts there from our wonderful community. And we do have a merch store. Don't forget about that. You can get some shirts, mugs, and other cool stuff. And we have some amazing t-shirt designs that are about to drop soon. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All those links are in the description. Finally, check out the beautiful orgone generators from Karen Holton. Let me show you one here. Look at this. These are the best quality orgone pyramids in existence. Go to her website, KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, or click the link in the description and use coupon code KNOWLEDGE10. You're going to get 10% off your order. Today I want to welcome Peter Panagore. He served in the New England as a United Church of Christ minister. He is author of Heaven is Beautiful and 2 Minutes for God. He is working on his third book, which provides mentoring to the spiritual seekers worldwide. Peter, welcome. How you doing?
Hey, Chris, good to see you.
It's great to see you. I've been looking forward to this. We're going to have a conversation today about an incredible experience you had after going ice climbing on the lower Weeping Wall in Alberta, Canada. On your descent, you became trapped on the side of the mountain. You got hypothermia and essentially died. What followed was a absolutely incredible experience that we're going to be discussing. First, this is your first time on. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then we're going to get into what happened.
Well, more recent background or ancient history?
Wherever you want to start, wherever feels relevant.
Relevant. I was natural born mystic before this all began, by which I mean that I had my first experience when I was 5, and then my second at 6, and other experiences up until the point at which I died. It sort of set me up, but only I only understood that in hindsight. So. A natural born mystic is a person who seems to have a natural, maybe it's a DNA connection, maybe it's a soul connection, or some combination of, but at a very young age begin to have extraordinary mystical experiences, and that word in particular, extraordinary mystical experiences, which I kept secret for my whole life until, well, recently. 20 years ago from my near-death experience, my first one, and more recently about my mystical life. But in terms of my profession, I went to Yale Divinity School, studied mysticism, became a pastor, hiding out in the church. I'm a non-believer. I ended up working in television for a while, and now I'm uh, speaking about near-death experience on a regular basis.
Now, when you say these profound mystical experiences, could you possibly describe and give us an example of what you were experiencing from a young age?
Yeah, I'll give you two, if that's okay, because they
Sure,
happen
yeah.
close by. The first one happened when I was 5 years old, and to make a long story short, I was in we had a new house, had a new baby in the house, and I was sent outside for the day, for the afternoon as the baby slept. And so I climbed to my little tree, and I was in my little tree waiting for my sisters to come home from school. It was early spring, and the leaves were two-tone color, spring fresh maple leaves, dark on top, light on the bottom, and they're flickering in the breeze. I'm 5 years old, and so I'm sitting there and I'm watching this, and I'm one or two branches up, and this mesmerizes me. I become like transported inside myself into this place of peace, just watching this flickering. And as suddenly a like a trumpet sound in my head, or an ocean sound, or a waterfall erupts behind me, this extraordinarily large, loud noise announces itself and reaches inside of me and pulls me out. And I'm experiencing this presence behind me and inside of me, and it just takes me out and just lifts me up, and I travel up this, basically an elevator chute, but I can see the tree and I can see my house, and then I reach sort of the blue, where the blue sky would be, and I'm transported through the sky into another realm. And this other realm, and I'm inside of this entity. So this entity is an angel. That's what an angel, a being of light, an intelligence, a dual located entity that was both a part of the divine where I ended up, and also a separate piece. It's paradoxical. So this entity carried me, and I'm now inside of this entity. And it's like a big bubble of energy, and I can see through its transparent walls into a darkness that I can see the darkness. So if you go into a room and you pull down on the curtains, you close the door, shut off the light, and you can't see your hand in front of your face, you can't actually see the darkness. This is not that. I could see the darkness, and it was vast, and I was floating inside of this bubble, inside of the darkness, and the darkness was alive. And as I'm there inside of it, an opening happens in this energy field, this force field, this entity, and in comes this being that is the darkness itself. It's like it reduced itself I'm in this ocean of darkness, and it makes itself smaller to come inside to speak with me. But it's shifting. It's shifting. It's like in a phase shift. It's moving one thing, and it's another thing, and it's another thing, and it's another thing. But it's one entity, and it speaks to me directly, and it says to me, "You belong to me." And in the moment, and this is no language, so this is non-linguistic. I'm in like essentially an astral body. I have some physicality to my structure. I can see myself in the tree. I can see out of the eyes that I have inside this self of mine, and I can see from the outside this scene happening in front of me. So I have two perspectives. I can see from my eyes of my astral self and from the outside. And so I know that this is myself, that I'm not the boy in the tree. And the voice says to me, "You belong to me." This is how my brain, when I'm back in my body, interpreted it as a 5-year-old. "You belong to me. You've always belonged to me. You work for me." And my response was, "Oh yeah, I know that. I guess I'd forgotten, but yes, this is true. This is my beingness." And then I get carried back down into the body again, down the same chute, stuff back in the body, and I climbed down out of the tree, and I went in the house against the rules to tell my mother that an angel had just visited me and that I belonged to God. And my mother wasn't a good afternoon for me. Let's just end it there. And no beating. No, my mom was very kind and loving, but I got punished. And I was only 5. So I learned from that lesson to keep my mouth shut about my mystical experiences. I told her, she said, "Oh, you're going to be a priest." And because I was raised Catholic, so priests won't have wives like me doing my dad's ironing, 1960 something, and you're going to have to dust the dining room and do it absolutely quietly.
Wow!
So no more hanging in the tree. So
yeah.
a year later, my brother was going to move into my room. My brother was an unexpected baby. He's 5 years younger than me. He has a new house. I had a private room, and now I've got this baby moving into my room. So to soothe me, my parents bought me a puppy. And so on my 5th birthday in February, I got a puppy. So this is the year on my 6th birthday. So this is the year I turned 6, and it's the springtime. And the day that my brother moves into my room, my dad accidentally rides over my puppy and kills it.
No.
So I have this like tumultuous day. And that night I go to sleep with tears. My mom's there with me. And, my dad comes in and I get put to sleep. My brother's in the room. And then in the middle of the night, I hear my name being called, "Peter, Peter, Peter." And I wake up and I know this. It's not my parents. It's not my sisters. It's not my grandparents. But I know this voice deep inside myself. It's loving me as it speaks. And so I awaken and I sit up and I hear it calling me. And as I sit up, I look back down and I'm still in bed. So there's a body of a boy in the bed, and I'm sitting up at the edge of my bed, and I realize that I can see in the darkness of my room, it's all like a sepia tone, and even though there's no light on, I can see, and it keeps calling me, and I know this voice, so I stand up, and I look down at my feet, and I'm not touching the floor. And it's calling me, and so I glide across to the door, but there's a door in the way, and I reach for the knob, and my hand passes through the knob, and the voice sees this happening from the other side of the door and says, "Walk through the door." So I walk through the door, and I go to the top of the stairs, and on the elbow at the stairs, it was a landing, like a little area where the stairs turned. There was an elephant. But this elephant was a baby elephant, but ancient, and it was dressed all in Indian garb, clothes, like clothes elephants wear, with mirrors on it. And it calls down to me, and I come to it, and its eyes are level to my eyes. And it is I look into one of its eyes, and it is the blackest, darkest darkness that I'd ever seen, but I could see the darkness in it, and I get absorbed into it. I kind of fly up into it, and I'm in the ocean of this eyeball. But it turns out that there's a vast universe inside this elephant, this baby elephant. But it's not a universe of things; it's a universe of compassion and wisdom and understanding. And so I'm awash in this presence of those things, and then I get pulled back out again, and I'm back eye to eye, and the elephant says, "Go down the stairs and out of the house." And I go down the stairs and out of the house. It motions with its trunk down the stairs. I go down the stairs and out of the house. I'm flying, floating, and I pass through the door and down the porch steps, and the elephant is still with me. I can't see it. I can hear it inside of me. It's inhabiting me somehow. And so, but it's not in language either. So I get out into the middle of the road, and we're on a hilltop on a cul-de-sac on the edge of an apple orchard. So it's a very isolated place in the city I live in. And it tells me, look up, and I look up and I see all of the stars. And as I look up, it says to me, look deeper. And I look deeper, and suddenly I'm like pulled into the infinity of the size of the universe and greater. And as that happens, it's too much for me. It's way too much for me. It frightens me. And in this fear moment, I'm back in my body again. And I awaken in my bed, and I spent hours against the rules of the house. My parents, stay in your bedroom. I searched the whole house for the elephant for hours. That's a couple of, but it wasn't until after I died that, and started on the depth of my journey, that I realized that those were attributes of Ganesh, and who I was raised outside of Boston, Irish Catholic and Greek Orthodox. I didn't know anything about Hinduism, nothing about Ganesh, never heard of it. And yet that was the guise in which the divine came to me as a child. So that's just the beginning of it. There are other people like me. I'm not alone in the world.
Oh, right. And I've actually spoken to quite a few people with these gifts and attributes. I want to know how, before we get to your story of your near-death experience, how did you go from having these profound experiences to, you said, essentially being non-spiritual and working with TV?
Yeah, I am not a believer. And that came as a result of my near-death experience. I'm a knower. I know it's real. It's an entirely different thing. So I ended up working in television because I was this minister in this congregational New England church in a swanky resort town. There was a huge embezzlement, and lots of other crazy things happened in the town. But it turns out that the mother of one of my deacons was produced this show. I didn't know. And so this show that I was on for 15 years and ended after 91 years. I was the fifth minister. It was the oldest religious broadcast in America. Started on AM radio, went to television in 54. And she recruited me because of my spirituality and my storytelling. Because it was on the NBC. So I could never mention God. Sometimes I mention God, but it was spiritual storytelling to bring hope and inspiration into people's lives in the middle of the morning news when everything was bad news. And it was a 501c3 nonprofit. I ran it for 15 years. New corporation came in, purchased the TV station, show closed. But it was great. And I'm not a religious person. I work in religion, but I'm a natural born mystic, but I know that God is real, or Allah, or Brahma, or Atman, or the ineffable, or whatever. Beloved. My beloved is what I call it to myself.
Right. I like that. Yeah, I think that's important to kind of establish where we're going next, and I do want to get into your experience. So take us there. What brought you to the Lower Weeping Wall in Canada?
Adventure, a lifetime love of outdoor adventure. It was my first ice climb, but it was not my first winter camping adventure. And we had where do I begin? I will begin. I'll start with brevity. I'll keep it brief and clean and to the point. I was a national exchange student from my university to Bozeman, Montana, Montana State University. I didn't want to go home to Boston to my family, which was suffering the loss of my sister. She vanished, ran away. But so 10 years of grief unresolved broke parts of my family that I love. And I decided to go to Canada to go on an 8-day snow caving trip and a 1-day ice climb. I'd been backcountry camping before in my life. I'd never ice climbed, but I'd been a mountaineer, I guess. I'd climbed plenty of mountains with and without ropes, steep and dangerous and fun. And so ice was a new thing for me, but it's actually easier than rock climbing, because in rock climbing you have to find your handholds and it's all these different techniques. Ice climbing, there's a slab of ice, you got your tools with you and you climb it. And it's more simple in that way, but more dangerous in that it's cold. And so we got to the lower Weeping Wall, which is north of Banff, for you Canadian people, you love it out there. Beautiful place. And there were other teams already climbing. We were the last team on the ice. I didn't have the right equipment. I had almost the right equipment. I was short a hammer, an axe. I had a hammer and an axe. I needed 2 axes. I was short an axe. And what that means is that when you set an axe into the ice, and you've probably seen this in videos, you set an axe into the ice, it's got a strap on it. The strap serves 2 purposes. One, you don't drop the axe. So it's always attached to you. And 2, you can open your hand up on the strap and just dangle on it and rest. So you get to be in a restful position and relax. But with a hammer, it's so much shorter, has a strap on it, so you don't drop it, but you can't hang from it. You have to always keep some tension in the grip. And it was a 500 or 600-foot climb, which meant that my forearms became burned out much faster than the rest of me. And so, structurally speaking, your thighs are huge, your calves are huge, your forearms is this dinky little thing, and it was supporting all of my weight. So why is this? I'm sorry, I have to shut this alarm off.
Oh, no worries.
I'm gonna do that. So by the time we reached the top of our climb, I had delayed us by hours. So when we reached the top of our climb, all the other teams, and there were several other teams, they were done and everyone was gone but the last team, and they were leaving. And we just reached the top. And so we knew that our trouble was serious hours before the temperature dropped 30 degrees and hypothermia set in like a snap of the fingers. So we reach the top of this thing. We're already scared. The sun goes down, temperature drops, hypothermia begins with violent physical, full body racking shivers. Like every single individual muscle is pulsating in its own jazz beat, and it's all with dissonance in between. Everything's moving in every direction by itself. And that's a pretty weird experience. Just to begin with, that's crazy, because I no control. Go from control to like everything's moving, and the teeth. I see your teeth. It's just totally involuntary. It makes it really hard to talk. You can bite your tongue. If you can keep your tongue, it's because it's spasming too. Everything's like going crazy. So. Tim hauls up the rope too fast, becomes a big knot because we're scared. Jim's a certified lead climber, so Jim's been through training for ice. I take off my gloves to untangle the rope. My frostbite begins to set in. The night continues. We know we're in serious, serious trouble, so we discuss our deaths. That's like what's the topic. We're going to die here. We know it's like really clear to us we're going to die here. We can't go down the way we came. We've got to, in the dark, traverse 3 rappels. If we stay where we are, it's death. If we move, if we try to do the rappels, maybe it's life. And so that was the choice that we made. So we rope ourselves off. We make it to our first rappel. I'm going to speed through all the terrors of the night. And there were plenty of terrors of the night. And I'll summarize it by saying a couple things. It was dark. It was seriously cold. As we progressed, our hyperthermia advanced, including the freezing of our brains, which causes your cognitive ability to decline. Eyeballs freeze. Eyeballs freezing. Feet were like blocks of ice standing in fire. Fire tips fingered, fire tip nose, ears, everything was on fire. And the terror that I felt inside myself, one of the reasons why Tim and I chose each other for this adventure is because, and we tested each other out before we went on another trip, is that we needed somebody with absolute level-headedness, like who understood the thing about climbing in general, rock or ice, is that it's hyper focus. You need to stay exactly where you are with exactly what you're doing while you're there. There's no mind wandering and there's no room for fear. You might be afraid, okay? But you have to suck that inside yourself in order to be present. And actually, the practice of being present sort of sucks the fear away. So there's this symbiosis that happens. So Tim is a super level-headed guy. I'm very level-headed in distress when I'm in distress. But the terror of the night was so deep inside me that I accessed a part of my brain that I hadn't known existed before. And it's somewhere inside I felt like it was way back in the depth of my stem, like in the beginning of where human brain evolved, where survival became the dominant nature of my entire existence. It was the only thing that mattered, and that was there was this willpower. The more terrified I became, the tighter I held my fear, the stronger I became in my willpower. It was proportional. And then it became disproportional because at some point I no longer had the ability to focus in. It just drove itself forward. It's like being in a survival machine that was me. So all of that going on, we get to our last rappel. It's many hours later, a long, dark night. The moon had risen so that we could see better in the dark. There was also, I should say, okay, so it wasn't completely dark even when there was no moon, because up that far north, where there's a bazillion stars in the sky and there's snow on the ground, you can see at night. And so we could see, but when the moon came up, we could see a whole lot better. And so we're down at our last rappel. It's some hours before dawn. We're hypothermically advanced. We've gone through all the stages and until the end final stages. And so this is the scene where we are. We're we're off the ice and we're on a ledge, but the ledge is like the size of a small boardroom table. So you're standing on this table, Tim's to my left, I'm to his right, and there's a corner, because we had rappelled down this crag in the shadows and then turned a corner and came to this ledge. So the rope was bent around this corner up to an iron ring and a pin epoxied into the mountain. And I had both ends of the rope. In this one position, there are harnesses. Pardon me, I always say that. There are straps. So there's iron pins in the mountain, epoxied in, iron rings, carabiners, webbing straps with a carabiner on the end of it, so we could hook our harnesses to the mountain. So for the first time all night, we're not going to fall. So we're actually physically safe in this, and we're only 100, 150 feet up. So I take the rope, I tie one end, I take off my gloves, I tie my hands. So afterwards, I have all my digits, but if you ever get a bruise, like a bad bruise, I was blood damaged into all my tissues. Everything was like my fingers in the weeks afterwards, which was kind of weird because I was my fingers afterwards were all black and blue. I was leaving on a theater tour with an American Sign Language theater company. And so actually when I get there, my fingers are all black and blue. And people would ask me, what happened to you? I was like, well, we had a really bad night. It's just
Yeah.
really, it was really bad. So anyway, anyway, we're on the mountainside. We're on this. I tie the rope off to my harness. I take the other end and I toss it off around the side, around this crag, and I pull on it, and the rope jams on the first pull. Like there's a V notch and the rope's lying in it and just goes just like that. And then I pull again and I jam it in tighter. And I'm like, now I'm going crazy because I know what this means. I can't go back up the way that I came. This rope is jammed, and I can't, and the more I pull on it, which I did, the tighter the jam became. And Tim was in a position where he couldn't help me with the rope. If I untied the rope, we could have dropped it, and then that would have been it. And he couldn't reach the rope the way the harnesses were set up. He couldn't reach with the rope to help me pull it. He with his arms extended. You'll hear about this later. You'll understand how far he could reach a little bit later in the story. So it was up to me, and that was it. I couldn't get it free. So the hypothermia continued. I went into the hot place, unzipped my coat, opened it up to the temperature of the cold. I felt like all the blood rushed into my core, and that I didn't need to keep my extremities. And like I remember thinking, I don't need my feet. I don't really need my arms. I just need my heart, my lungs, and my brain. And I knew that it was crazy, but that's and I need to tell people I was the first responder on this trip. I was in the National Ski Patrol, worked at a mountain, been to ski patrol since I was in high school, and so I was well aware of why it was wrong to unzip your coat, but I didn't care. And that's really what happens with the brain, is the brain no longer makes rational decisions. And so I made this irrational decision, even though I knew it, and got yelled at by my climbing partner, Tim. And then a peace settled over me, and I accepted what was going on. I just kind of gave up. And I started thinking about my parents and my God, and because I was a good Catholic boy, not that good. I was totally, anyway, good enough, I guess.
Right.
Right. And so am I blushing? Anyway, so I had this peace come over me, an acceptance of what was going on, and then I began to fall asleep. I'd fall asleep. I collapsed onto the rock. With my helmeted head, wake back up again. And when I would fall asleep, and this is important for what I'm about to tell you, is that when I would fall asleep, I wasn't like snuggling into my pillow and closing my eyes and counting sheep. It was like an instantaneous blackout. My body shut down. I was asleep, and then I fell down and I smacked myself and I woke up. And that sort of thing happened again and again. And every time I stood up and pulled on the rope, and then I got up again. And as I stand up, I have tunnel vision. All of my peripheral vision is now one big black circle, and it's rushing into a close really rapidly. And I remember like looking around, trying to figure out what the heck was going on, and it just went black. And when it went black, all of my pain went away. All of my confusion began, because I know that I was thinking as this was collapsing, am I falling asleep? I must be falling asleep. And then I didn't fall asleep. I was wide awake, but I was also out of pain. And where the mountain was, there was this infinite darkness, and the same kind of infinite darkness that you can see the depth of, and it extends into infinity. And I don't know what's going on. I'm completely confused. And way far in the furthest distance, like a single star pops into existence and rushes toward me faster than light, expanding as it comes, filling my vision and communicating to me directly inside myself. You're coming with me. I'm taking you. And I was, no, you're not. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm not going anywhere. So I put up all of my willpower of my life, that was this mammalian, reptilian, deep part of my early hominid brain. I put that up as my weapon, as my shield, and it was as if it did not exist. It just was nothing to it. It reached inside me and pulled me into itself. and I was inside of itself, and I lost all agency at this point. I became like a Raggedy Andy doll, just sitting there, absorbing the sound of the voice of this divine being who is speaking, was the resonance of the entire chariot, to go to Ezekiel's language. The bubble of the divine being was itself an entity speaking to me, and it spoke comfort to me, and beauty, and love, and welcome, and assurance. And I had some kind of physicality to me, but not like an astral body. I now had some other kind of shape, still like Peter, but not the same as the one that took the trip to as a boy, but somehow more so self. And I was inside the body, and I was looking at the body from the outside again, looking at myself traveling inside of the sphere from a third point of view, as if I was the darkness, or I was in the darkness as part of the darkness itself. So I had these 2 points of view simultaneously, and I get carried by this intellect. That's the other thing. This is intellect beyond any way that I can describe to you how intelligent this being is. It's as intelligent as all the knowledge of all the material knowledge in all the universe and more. And it is also this all powerful. It's all power. I had no power to move. Well, I could only absorb its beingness. And so it carries me off on the same trajectory from which it came. And I emerge into this deeper darkness. So now I've kind of gone through, I've gone through a barrier. I'm in this sort of transport darkness, and now I enter into a deeper darkness. And as this, it's like the entity unfolds itself, and either it becomes this entire heaven, or it's always been that entire heaven, or I don't. It's paradoxical and difficult to talk about. So I am now inside of this darkness that's also illuminated, because I can see the depth of the darkness in every single direction, and it all leads into infinity in every single direction. And I can't see the infinite, but I can see that the infinity is there, and I can see this distance that reaches toward it, and yet isn't it fully. And I can see it all in all these different directions. And I'm like a one energy consciousness. My seeing in every direction is my beingness, is my thinking. And I could think, but I didn't have a brain in the way of my thinking. My thoughts were full and total and self all at once. And the first realization I had was that this is me. This is me. This has always been me. This is what I am. I am whatever that was, that incarnated meat thing. That was never me. This is, and I am energy consciousness, but it's also a place of no-thingness. So this is a place of nothingness. And there are no things here. I am not a thing. I'm not a molecule. I'm not a quark. I am no physical thing whatsoever. I'm not even, people talk about energy, and yes, as a metaphor, I am energy, but I'm not an electron. I'm not electromagnetic radiation of any form whatsoever. I am no-thingness. And so I am this entity consciousness in this infinite space, feeling home, feeling comfortable, feeling unafraid. And the darkness opens in front of me, and it opens in front of me like a doorway of light. And I describe it all these different ways, but I describe it these days like a liquid light, like a waterfall, like a big, huge Niagara Falls. Only it's the purity of the purest white that you can't imagine. And it's every single color of all of the stars in the sky that night and more. It's all of these things all at once, and it has fluidity, and I see the surface of it. So I see that it's like solid, and I see its depth. I see through it, it's transparent, and I see a tunnel leading into the infinity itself, way into the darkness, the end of which I cannot see. but it's also speaking to me with this compulsion, creating a compulsion of attraction inside of me. And it welcomes me and soothes me, and I move toward it, and I touch it with my being. And when I touch it, like I want to touch it with my being, and it wants me to touch it. And as I touch it, it fills inside of me and flows into me, and I become expansive. And all of these things happen simultaneously. So I hear the sound, which is unspoken language and a purity of communication of my own creation. I know that I'm known. I know that I'm created. I see that I am creature. I see that I'm made of the same substance, but I am definitely less than. This entity is unlimited, unmanifested, and I am limited and manifested even in my consciousness of my soul, in the presence of the fullness of this being. It calls me into being. It shows me the origin of myself, the birth of my creatureness as soul is like I'm like an individual photon that's a wave and particle. I am two things simultaneously, and I'm superpositioned. I'm also inside the divine light itself, which is made up of a gigaplex of individuated photons, all of whom work in like a field together as one unlimited entity. And I am the same substance, but much, much smaller. And so I'm sort of I'm created creature as a soul consciousness, and I can see that I am also in the presence of the fullness of the light, and I see my entire soul. I see the length of my consciousness, the breadth of it. I see it's got an everlasting life to it. It had a beginning, but it's been alive for eons, universes. And I see like I have a butcher block table that I refinished for my desk, and it's like I am the butcher. I'm like the wood of the butcher block, and the incarnated lives that I lived are the tiny thin little lines. They're not who I am. I am the maple tree from what this is made, and I am. My roots reach into the divine light, and my leaves are these other lives, but none of them are actually me. And I got to see inside. I saw inside of two of them, and in one I was a human being, and another I don't know what world I was in. I was confused. I didn't know. I didn't understand anything. All of this happens. And this is all simultaneous, and I tell it in a chronology, but it is timelessness. It's always now, but it's always all time. It's time that was and is, and it's inverted and upside down and inside out, all time in this space now. And so when I see my other lives, I see the inconsequentiality of them to the truth of the actuality of the origin of myself, which is the divine light itself. And so which makes up the substance of my soul. So all of this is happening. And now I'm also simultaneously, I'm also Peter in this. I know that the Peterness of me, all of my behaviors and actions, I know that I am known. In understanding the creatureliness of my being created, I know that that creature, that my soulness is known, but I also know that I've always been known as a human being, and that the divine lived inside me and witnessed my experience and experienced my experience with me. And so there is nothing of my life up to today that is unknown to the divine. I had no dark hiding places. And the rush of the fullness of the fire of love, which showed me myself, put me into a hell of my own making, in which I suffered all of the pain that I ever gave away as a human being to everyone I gave it to in a chronological experience from the interior of their bodies and their experience of what I gave to them and the pain that I caused in their lives. Because in the same way that the divine lives inside of me and experiences the world inside of me, it's true for everyone. It's true for everyone. And it was true for those who I caused pain to. And so as I experienced all of the pain that was given to me, pardon me, as I experienced all of the pain that I gave away, it turned out that the pain that I gave away, I gave to me. And that as I experienced from their interior point of view, their rush of emotions and their confusion of thinking, I simultaneously experienced all of my justifications and reasons for causing them the pain in the instant that I caused it. And the balance of the judgment between these two things, the amount of pain that I caused them and my tiny, tiny reasons and stupid ideas that I wanted to hurt them for were nothing in comparison. And all of this pain that I gave them absorbed into me for my entire life. And so whatever I gave away came back to me. But also simultaneous to this, the divine voice is speaking inside of me, showing me my own creation, speaking love to me. Love you. I love you. I know you. I've always known you. I forgive you. I've always forgiven you. Just forgiveness is here. Love is here. Love is here. Just calling and calling and calling. And so I judged myself. I judged myself in comparison to the divine light beauty that was all there is, this all lifeness. And in the middle of all of this, I saw that the pain that I caused primarily my family, because that's, I was 21 years old, most of my experience with my family, the pain that I had caused my family and all the little actions I had done were no greater or lesser than anyone else's, and speaking in Catholic language here, sinfulness. So I could see all of humanity and I could see the universe. I was shown an aspect of the universe and the structure of how it's put together. And essentially, it's not our fault that we cause pain to other people. That's the structure and the nature of the entire thing, from beginning to end, from the Big Bang and the black holes that consume star systems, and the viruses that are contagious that kill people. Everybody eats somebody else. Everybody causes pain. Everything is that way. It's not your fault. The voice says to me that I built it this way, that I make it this way. And so what I saw was this equality of brokenness. And the result in my life of seeing this equality of brokenness is the recognition of twofold, that I am exactly the pain that I have inside me that makes me act out and wound others is the same pain they have inside them that makes them act out and wound others. Therefore, I can forgive them because they are also made of the same substance and light that I am. And they're caught in the same matrix as me. And we have this great equality. I saw that when I was up there. And in the midst of all of this, I just kept hearing the love being spoken to me. And it was sort of like, it's like through the lens of the love that was given to me all my life from my family and my friends, and all the love that I gave away, even to these people that I hurt, became my ear of my soul that allowed me to hear the divine speaking to me. And I describe it as a fire of purgative love, a divine fire of purgative love. This love that outpouring was cleansed me of the attachments that I created for myself that prevented me from experiencing the fullness of the light that was being offered to me. And all I needed to do was listen to it, just accept it, and it was self-evident too. It wasn't like there was almost as much compulsion to accept it as there was to first touch it. But I still had a choice. But there was so much of it. There was as if there was no choice. How could I not accept this love? And so I accepted this love. I turned toward it, and then it blew me up like a balloon. Like all of these facets of things we divide here, all the good things in life, joy and bliss, paradise, all the good words, helpfulness, kindness, knowledge, understanding, all these things, bliss, paradise, beauty, love, light, they were all one thing. They are not separate things. They are one truth, and that have facets to them, but they're all one thing. And all of those filled inside of me and kept expanding inside of me, bringing me into this state of where I ceased to exist, and the divine was the totality of my experience in the moment that I was in it. I entered this state of this unitive being, where I was not the fullness of the divine light, but there was so much of it in me. That was my experience of my soul self. It's paradoxical, and if I felt like if there a little bit more had been allowed into me, then I would have obliterated permanently back into the divine self, reabsorbed fully, not to be individuated at all. And then I shrunk down. And I can stop here for a second if you want to talk. I've got more to tell, but it's a place I could stop.
Oh, well, I'm going to save all my questions for the end because this is fascinating. I have a few. So let's hear the entire story.
All right,
first.
I'll speed right in.
Yeah.
So I'm shrunk back down again, and somehow or other, I have some Peter memory with me. I'm like, am I dead? And the voice says, yes, you're dead. And this voice is right present to me, like right next to me, but I can't see it. It is all things that are in this universe. This it's not a universe, it's a heaven. It's an eternal illuminated darkness is the divine entity itself. I'm in the body of the divine, and it is also right next to me, and I can't see it, but it's speaking inside of me, and the whole place reverberates with it. But it's right inside of me. And I say, am I dead? And it says, yes, you're dead. I say, I can't go now. And come, it's your time. Welcome. It's your time. Come. Why can't you go? I say, because my family's broken, and my sister had vanished, and it had broken my mother's heart pretty badly. And grieving forever for a child you don't know where is. And I couldn't take another kid from them, is what it was. If I were to die, it would break her utterly and fully. And so in that second, in that moment, in that thought, I'm swept across all the universe. I say, how do I put this? I express this idea to the divine that I have this. I feel like I have a responsibility not to break my parents further. And in the thought, I'm swept across heaven to like this. I describe it as like a Higgs boson field where energy becomes matter, where heaven becomes the universe, and I'm stuck outside it a little bit, but most of me, the majority of me, and I'm ginormous in comparison to what I am now, but some of me is sticking out, and I can see our entire universe. I see all of it right in front of me, every galaxy, and my vision is brought down to our galaxy, down to our star system, down to our Earth, and Earth is this holographic living entity. So it is as it is in time at the moment I'm looking at it. It's not, I'm actually like above the earth, seeing it in live time. And I see every single person. I can see through the earth. I can see every single person on the earth, all acting and doing what they're doing as they're doing it. Wars and sleeping and lovemaking and babies being born, everything, construction work, and I could see all of it. And the whole thing is covered with this huge foam. And it's in between all of the people. And all of the people inside, every one of them, no matter who they are, no matter what they're doing, is a flake of golden light. Everyone has this flake of golden light inside them, and none of them can see it in the other because this foam prevents them. And this golden flake of light is what connects them to then what happens next is that the voice says to me. And so I'm still sticking outside into our universe, but most of me is inside, and from these sort of two locations, from the physical world of all the universes. So I see all these universes all at once, and I see the immensity of love that the divine has put into all of these universes, was, is, and always shall be. This infinite level of love that comes to me from the material world, but it also comes to me primarily from the divine self itself. And it is love beyond measure. And it infills me, and it shows me that all of this love is pointed right at me. This eternal love is who I am, and I am the beloved. And the voice says, in the way I love you now, you experience me now, right here. This is the way I have always loved you, and everything from the moment all creation begins. Creations begin. I am this love, and because of my love, all is, was, and will be well eternally for everyone. And my focus came down to all of the human beings, and they were as beloved as me. As much as I was like the prodigal child, the special, most beloved in the universe, so was everyone else. And I could see very clearly the truth of the eternal nature of the light. And in this experience, I saw my parents. So my parents sort of zoomed up into view, and I could see their two faces, and I could see two sets of lives for them. I could see the life without me and the life with me. And I could see on their faces the depth of the accumulation of their lifetime suffering. And I could see at the end of both of these parallel life sets, their well-being. So the same way that I could see my own well-being, because I was well-being, I was whole and healed and with capital H and and capital W, I saw the same end for them, which is the same end I see for everyone. And the voice says, you can stick around, they're going to be fine. And a minute from now, from our point of view, they're going to be dead in here. But I could see that that was true, but I could see that their suffering in their lifetime, that would not be their perspective. I could see that the length of my human life was the wink of my eye. And that's actually the reason why I thought it'd be okay to come back, because time felt long down there, but not up here. So I said, but I haven't gone all the way through the tunnel yet, and they could use my help. And the voice said, it's time for you to come. I said, and the voice said, well, you don't have to go. I said, well, if I go, can I come back to this state of being? And the voice said, yes, you'll come back to this state of being. I said, I choose to live my life. And the divine flicked me out of its finger and shot me back. And as I shot back, it said to me, you won't live your life. And I shrunk down, and I was presented with a million doorways of entry into lives I could live inside this body. And in the core center of all of these was the largest of all, by a large measure, like a beam of white light. And as I flew toward these doors, the voice said all these things to me at once. Choose. It said, and it leaned me into the light. It's like it showed me the light in particular, and the light sort of was from this super intensity, less intense, until it was almost dissipated, but not fully. And so I chose somewhere not in the fullness of light, because I still wanted to be me. I wanted to be a physical being of brokenness, I guess is a way to put it. And so I made a choice. And the choice was made, and I saw all of the probabilities of all of those lives. I saw all the probabilities of my current life. I saw all of the choices I could make that could lean me down deeper into the light. And then I was reduced and crushed and stuffed and twisted and painfully twisted back into my body again. And I became aware of suffering and pain. And my brain, I didn't know where I was or what was going on. I was completely confused. All I know is I had no pain, and now this thing is suffering. All it is suffering. And the contrast was distinct. And the as my brain came back up online, I began to hear this noise, and it resolved itself into a voice and a language I began to understand. And I opened my eyes, and Tim had reached down across the distance down to me, couldn't quite get to me, and he's shaking me he had one hand on me, and don't die, don't die. He's screaming and he's crying and he's screaming, don't die, don't die. And my eyes open, and he's like, oh my God, you were dead, you were dead. And he helps pull me up, and I sort of come back to myself over a period of time. But I don't know where I am or who I am or what I am. And I pull the rope, and we descend, and we self-rescue using hypothermic technique in the tent. And I know we're going to run out of time, so I'm stopping here.
We can go overtime, definitely, for sure. That's incredible. Now, whenever you get back and you start to do the self rescue, I mean, what happens after this? When did you kind of start to realize that you actually died and all this stuff happened?
Well, I didn't understand. My problem wasn't trying to realize that I had died. My problem was trying to figure out where I was. So now I'm an alien inside this body. I don't know where I am. I'm trying to all right, so I'm in British Columbia. I'm in Alberta. I'm in a body, but what is this thing? What is this world? What are these? This is why do I have to touch things? Why do I have to eat things? Why do I have to breathe? Why do I need blood? Why do I have to walk? Why can't I just be? Why is there suffering? All of these things all at once, they were immediate. The moment I came back, it erupted, and I'm in this entirely different world. And I'm like in the movie Avatar, only I don't know where I am. I know where I was, and that where I was who I was, but somehow I'm cast out of there, and I'm stuck inside of this thing, and I don't know. I'm suddenly seeing light everywhere. I see light inside of everything. And it's not just with my human eyes. I feel it with my body. It's like there's this river of radiance permeating everything, and I am disconcerted. And and everything in the physical world. I'm in one of the most beautiful places in North America. And there's a lot of beautiful places in the world, many very beautiful places. This is one of those. This is a most beautiful place. And to me, it's two-dimensional, black and white, flicker, Mickey Mouse sort of crudeness. And I am too. It's not just the exterior world. I am too, because I'm in this same space. And so I knew immediately something had happened to me. And as I thought about it, I came to the conclusion that I died, because I had no other explanation for it, but I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't understand who I was, but I knew I wasn't this. And everybody around me treated me as if I was. And it was very disruptive, very, very disruptive. And inside of me. So meanwhile, on my interior, I still hear the voice of the divine speaking my name. Only it's not like a whisper. It's like a roaring ocean. It's like the full force of Niagara Falls with a microphone at the bottom and the volume, the gain up, just the loudest noise of my beingness being spoken inside myself. And it's also saying to me, speak, speak, speak. And I'm like, I know instantly that there's no language that I have to even think about my experience. There's just no language to think about it. All I can do is experience it. I can enter into it and experience it, but I can't talk about it even to myself. And it's speaking to me, commanding me to speak. And I was pretty pissed off. I was like, I was rebellious from the moment I came back. It was so filling and inside of me, I had no choice but to be in it, but I felt like I'd been tricked. I didn't know that I wasn't going to live my life. I didn't know that this was what I was going to become. I wrongly thought I was going to come back and live as I had before, but not at all. I became an entirely new identity inside my body. And to that I had to adjust. And I was I swore I would not speak of it until I ever found words, if I ever did. And so, because how do you, and so within 2 or 3 weeks of this, okay, so lots of things happened after this. We spend time in jail. That the next day we're in jail. We pay our way out. We totaled the car against a semi. I end up having to hitchhike back to Montana. Oh, it's like super traumatic. Bad things happened. It didn't get better. It got worse. And then within like 3 weeks, I'm on this national theater tour. I'd been in rehearsal with this theater company at the university all year, and we're doing 24,000 miles and 64 shows across the United States. And now I've got a stutter from the car wreck. I can't even talk from all of the trauma. It's just like trauma upon trauma upon trauma. I'm a total wreck. Wow. And yet I'm also, my body's a wreck, but I'm also, there's other things inside of me alive. And so I spent the next 3 months sitting in the back of the pickup truck by myself with my sleeping bag and my sleeping pad, the pickup truck that towed the trailer of all our theater gear. And then there was the 15 passenger van that everybody else sat in. And I isolated myself every day. I never rode with them. I was so lost that but fortunately for me, I went to a Catholic high school, and in my Catholic school, all boys school, thugs with ties is the way we well-dressed thugs with ties. There was a monastery nearby, and in the monastery, they developed centering prayer practice, which is a Theravada Buddhism combination with ancient Catholic mystics like the Cloud of Unknowing and Meister Eckhart, in kind of combination contemplative prayer practice of silence. And my religion teacher, my senior year, went on a retreat in 77, learned how to do this and taught it to us. And I became instantaneously attracted to it. And so I had begun my daily practice years before this event ever happened, because it tied into my mystical life. It was a natural for me. And so I just dove inside myself. So the entire 24,000 miles, I was either staring at this incredible, beautiful United States from the back of the pickup truck, and or meditating the whole time, because only inside myself was there any balance. I could only find sort of satisfaction, stability. I could only touch myself inside myself. So I came back a radically different person. And part of where we began, part of what I came back with is that God had no gender, no name, no beingness, no religion. I came back with no faith. I know that I am known, and I know where I'm from. I know to whom I belong. I know where I'm going, and I live my life accordingly. And so I guess the biggest change that happened for my family, I was going to go into the family architecture firm. My dad was president of the Massachusetts Architecture Group and had made a name for himself. And my sister was in graduate school in architecture. And although I was an English major, I was going to go in, I could also draw. So I was going to go to graduate school in architecture. And I turned all of that down. And I went to study mysticism. And I went to Yale, where they don't teach mysticism, but they do. There are classes all over the university. And my dean of students accepted me on an independent study for 3 years and allowed me to study wherever I wanted across the university, which I did, and also found money to hire a professor for me. And so I got this 3-year intensive education on the history of Western classical mystical tradition and their contemplative actions, their tools that they used. And I began to use these tools inside myself, along with other tools like Kriya Yoga from the Yoga Sutras and the autobiography of a yogi, combined with physical yoga, hatha yoga, and centering prayer practice. And I went on a language hunt. That's what I'm on. I'm really the work I do is in linguistics. I'm really a communicator. I try to communicate to myself about the ineffable so that I can be a communicator for the ineffable the best I can be in language. The best light of it, of the only real light, is that it sees itself and speaks for itself. And that's the language of the divine that happens at a much deeper level than language can ever reach. Even if inside of language, light can be woven. And light can be woven into paintings, into poetry, into bread when you're baking and you want to put love in it. It can also be put into the camera and into the microphone and into the page, which is why when people read Rumi or Hafez or the Bible in certain places, that they have an awakening in the moment of this communication. So I spent my life like this. I got ordained in the United Church of Christ as a congregational minister, figuring I could hide out inside of religion. The same dean was in this denomination, and she talked me into it. I was going to go off and get my graduate degree, study Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism interface of mysticism. That was I was already making proposals and I was deep into the idea. But she talked me into trying out being a pastor because she thought I had the heart for it. So I figured some of my great literary heroes all went to divinity school. Some were divines, like Emerson and Thoreau and Blake and Wordsworth and those sorts of people. So I figured I could hide in plain sight. I could do basically social work, and I could read. I could continue my reading, which I did. And I continued my prayer practices and my yoga practice, which I did. And I just called them my job. And nobody, so I hid in plain sight and got some of the worst assignments you can imagine. And I used to describe myself as a spiritual ass kicker. They'd be like, "Oh, you're a pastor?" I'd be like, "No, I'm a spiritual ass kicker." And they'd be like, "What?" I said, "Well, the two churches that hate each other for 100 years and work against each other, but share a pastor." I had to help them find their way through that. And then there was this huge embezzlement where I was, and that I got. The truth was, I wasn't really the ass kicker. I was the kicky. I'm the one who got kicked, and but it was because of the divine light that enabled me to live inside the heaven that's real for me, inside me right now. So as long as I can live in my interior world and I aim my life on my interior, I find that I can do anything on the exterior world. I can endure and work and channel.
Man, that is incredible. We could talk for another couple of hours, and I was on the edge of my seat for plenty of this conversation. I want to end with just your thoughts on something from not only yourself, but many of the spiritual shows that I've done and individuals I've spoken with, and my own experiences with my own spirit guides. I have an understanding, and this is like another level of understanding for me, your story, is that we're all kind of pieces of God or the divine that want to experience life, and our experiences kind of define what we are as a human. But really, I think I know mine, or some of us, end goal is to get back to that source or divine, and that's kind of the, I guess, goal for being incarnated here for some of us. Would you say?
Yes, and the good news is you will get back there. The moment of your death, that's what happens. And so there's striving in life, and I'm a striver too. I strive to return to that place in the now. That's really what I think you mean, is when you say return to it, it's to bring it as close as you can, yes, every time that you can.
Yes.
And then the great moment of evolution occurs when the body stops working. And then the accumulation, my experience was that the love that I had gathered in my life was my ear to hear the divine light. The more I hear the divine light in my life, the bigger my ear becomes. So the larger your ear is when you die, the more you pursue it here. And I am an extension of the divine self, looking out at itself, experiencing itself. It's and so I worry a lot less about what I can manifest in my physical world and the desires of my personal wants, because I know that I'm in a temporary place. Peter is a passerby. My soul is the self who I actually am. And I don't say that because I imagine it or think it. I am that. And this is the reality that many of us who die and come back with. And many of us who don't die and have a divine mystical experience come back with. You don't need a near-death experience to have a taste of this truth. Half the population has tasted this truth, but you have to choose to pursue it. And that's really one of the differences. It won't impede, not choosing won't impede your transition. You'll die and the light will be there. But choosing enhances your position. And it's not a choosing of what I want. It's actually the opposite of that. It's the choosing of not me, less of me, stepping aside, allowing surrender and consumption. And it turns out that in the consumption of the false self, the real self, the true self, the higher self manifests itself larger and larger and larger inside of us now. And every single mystical experience, you get a new identity. Every time you enter the silence, you become a new person. You're born again and born again and born again and born again and born again. You keep this transition going as your ear grows. And it's not just me who's saying this. You look across the literature, across the world, in different mythologies and different symbols, the same truth. This singleness, this oneness, this light, it's everywhere. And that's why, that's not the reason I picked to do that instead of something else in pursuit of it. But it's one of the reasons in the world. I pick it because it picked me.
Very well said. Peter, that was incredible. I'd love to talk to you again soon in the future. There's so much more we could talk about. Thank you so much for coming on. Before you head out, tell the audience where they can find out more about you, website, where they can get your books, things like that.
peterpanagore.love. And I'm available for conversations and consultations and counseling. And you can book that at my site too, peterpanagore.love. Books are all over the world. It's an international Audible bestseller and it's been an option for a film, my second book, and working hard at that because I want the message to be spread as broadly and as widely as possible to as many people, because you don't need people like me. You already have it inside yourself.
Yes, it's an incredible message too. Thank you so much, Peter. That was awesome. And like I said, I'd love to definitely talk with you again in the future.
My pleasure. I'll move that along.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We actually will be talking again later today. So we'll see you then.